There has been one loud topic of conversation within the gaming sphere. The number one source of discourse when it came to this year's Game Awards was the fact that Spider-Man 2, a seeming juggernaut in Sony's tool belt of exclusives, didn't win a single award for anything. Art direction, audio, narrative design, certainly not Game of the Year. A lot of people like to point to the fact that it was just a tough year. It was just absolutely stacked with other games that were vying for people's attention. Alan Wake, Tears of the Kingdom, Baldur's Gate 3. It was just such a chaotic year to be able to try to squeeze in with what people felt and feel is a very derivative title. I have a more nuanced approach to it. I feel like if things had just played out a little bit differently in terms of the timeline of releases for the Spider-Man franchise, Spider-Man 2 could have very realistically taken home a good number of awards this year. So what would be that one singular reason that stopped them from being able to take home a single award? 2 words. Miles Morales. People don't like black people. I'm joking. This was a PlayStation 5 launch title, and it demonstrated the very beginnings of what the PS5 was going to be able to do. That meant better resolution, better loading times, enhanced graphics. This thing was an absolute powerhouse when it first came out, and honestly, it was majority a console seller to people that were looking to early adopt the PS5. Now, while some people are a little divisive on Miles Morales, some people tend to believe, and myself included, that the original title, Spider-Man on the PS4, was just a all-around better game, which is just true. Spider-Man Miles Morales was produced on a smaller budget in a quicker time frame and meant to sort of be an iterative DLC type title. And while financially this worked really well in favor for Sony, based on leaks that we've seen from Insomniac, the game sold relatively well in relation to their expectations and the sort of budget they put in. However, Sony putting that sort of prioritization on Miles Morales as a console seller meant that we got to see under the hood of this engine working on PS5 hardware before the release of Spider-Man 2. Now, this is a problem for 2 reasons. One being, by focusing in on having that early gratification within the PS5 lifecycle, they were compromising people's ability to have separation from Spider-Man PS4. I assure you, if we did not all get access to Miles Morales as a PS5 exclusive title early on in the release cycle of the PS5, we would have had a 6-year gap between Spider-Man PS4 and the PS5 version of Spider-Man 2. Large gaps in time when it comes to a franchise tends to allow for more striking senses of evolution. You start to wonder, what is this going to look like? What is this going to feel like? How are the graphics going to be? What sort of evolutionary combat mechanics and general mechanics are going to exist going from A to B? But having that cycle interrupted meant that people already kind of played Spider-Man 2. Granted, that's underselling it because Spider-Man 2 has a lot of amazing looking enhancements from Miles Morales. It's just that when your game is running at 4K and it was already a looker, Spider-Man PS4 is probably one of the best looking games ever released. Add on to that the fact that we weren't given that large of a gap between the 2 games meant that we already had a sense of what sort of game this was going to be. The fact that having that midway point between the 2 titles meant that we were more likely to suffer from franchise fatigue. Despite all the improvements that Spider-Man 2 was able to make to the overall gaming experience, there was no way they were going to be able to change their formula dramatically enough to truly warrant Spider-Man 2 feeling like a beacon title for the PS5. I feel like another thing that a lot of people don't point to is the fact that Spider-Man 2 was announced a while ago. The initial Marvel Spider-Man 2 PlayStation Showcase released in 2021, September 9th to be exact. So we're looking at around 2 years and change since the actual announcement of this game compared to when it actually came out. By consequence of having this large gap, we were able to sort of temper our expectations. We saw what Miles Morales was like, and having a 2-year gap that wide for a game that ultimately felt subtly iterative likely led to a lot of people feeling a little bit embittered to the fact that this $70 title felt so similar to prior games in the series. It has nothing to do with whether this is a good game, a bad game, or anything in between. Absolutely nothing. But it has everything to do with the fact that people were tired of seeing this franchise in the state that it had been. Ultimately, when you've perfected the Spider-Man formula, which we could all arguably say Insomniac has done, where do you go? Genuinely. I think it's a testament to how critical a game like Wolverine is going to be for Insomniac, because it's going to have them completely wipe the board of a lot of, granted, perfected systems in favor of flexing creative muscles to make new gameplay loops. That said, it's undeniable that Spider-Man 2 released in a very, very crowded year, and you have to give it credence. When you're in a year competing with Resident Evil 4 Remake, Baldur's Gate 3, Tears of the Kingdom, Dead Space Remake, Diablo 4, Alan Wake 2, Super Mario Wonder, Street Fighter 6, Star Wars Jedi Survivor. There's so many more than even just that. It makes sense that these fresh experiences across the board of genres would be more likely to catch gamers' attention than strictly another sequel. I've seen a lot of discourse when it comes to Baldur's Gate 3 winning Game of the Year, and the comparison tends to be the actual gameplay itself. People compare Baldur's Gate 3, rightfully so, to a tabletop game or a game of D&D, and they express that that's so boring compared to the flow state sort of gameplay that you can find in Spider-Man 2. The issue with this is contending with the fact that this is, to gamers that enjoy those sorts of experiences, the best of this sort of gameplay. This is a genre that's existed forever. Go to Steam and look at some of the top selling games any given month. They tend to be top-down strategic video games. Baldur's Gate breaking into the mainstream through PlayStation and Xbox and is achieving the sort of acclaim that they were able to get is just one of those things that's really important to a games industry to stay fresh. I understand there's a lot of attachment to the Marvel brand. I understand that Spider-Man 2, as somebody who's played it and is actively enjoying it myself, it's a fantastic game. The story's fun. It has its moments that maybe aren't so perfect, but it has fantastic gameplay, fantastic all-around graphics, but it feels like a game I've played already. I've played Miles Morales. In fact, I 100%ed it. I got a platinum trophy for it. I did the same thing for Spider-Man PS4 when that initially came out. But unfortunately, when you are seeing small iterative evolutions from title to title to title, it just stands to reason that people are going to gravitate towards new things. And in a year with some of the heaviest hitting games that have released of all time, if some of these games, if Resident Evil 4 Remake, if Tears of the Kingdom, if Dead Space Remake, Diablo 4, Alan Wake 2, if these games were the sole juggernaut title of a given year, they would have won Game of the Year. But they all came out in a single year, which meant that having something evolutionary was really, really important to actually getting acclaim. Going from Spider-Man PS4 and seeing how slow the swinging is compared to the speed of Spider-Man 2, you might be blown away by that. But unfortunately, when it comes to critics, when it comes to people who choose who wins these sorts of awards, they have played Miles Morales. There was nothing else to play when the PS5 first came out. And the original Spider-Man was an award-winning darling when it first came out on PS4. Of course, these critics have played that as well. So if you've played both of those games and you really don't get to feel that Halo 2 to Halo 3 absolute bombastic energy, you're stuck wondering, what exactly makes it worthy of a Game of the Year? Now, I know it's highly contested. Some of the games that won awards probably should have lost to Spider-Man 2. But ultimately, the contention is around Game of the Year, and that's where you have to consider the fact that this was a highly, highly iterative title that didn't actually take broad enough stroke risks in comparison to Miles Morales, a game that came out only a few years ago. This is my first time making freeform, non-scripted content like this. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm going to be uploading pretty consistently here. I was able to pump something out like this really, really quickly, and it's a lot of fun. It lets me sort of treat my YouTube channel almost as if it's a social media page where I can have these sorts of discussions. Do you disagree? Do you agree? What do you think? Do you think Spider-Man 2 should have won Game of the Year, or at the very least won an award? Which award? Let me know down in the comments below. Did you like the video? If you did, let me know. This is the very first time I've approached something sort of in this style. I want to be uploading more frequently, so if you'd like to catch some of that, be sure to be subscribed to the channel, and I'll be uploading more frequently. Guys, I hope you're having a fantastic holiday season. I appreciate you guys for watching this video, and please remember to stay golden.